Are you ready for the Word? Let's go to Leviticus 23 again. And let's see what it has to, what it does tell us about the moed, the appointed time of first fruits. Look in verse 9. And Yahweh spake unto Moses, saying, again, Yahweh speaking, He's speaking because it's His feast. Speaking to the children of Israel and saying to them, when you be come into the land which I give unto you, and shall reap the harvest thereof, then you shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest unto the priest. And he shall wave the sheaf before Yahweh to be accepted for you. On the morrow, after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it. Note that, mark that. On the morrow, after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it. And you shall offer that day, when you wave the sheaf, a he-lamb without blemish of the first year for a burnt offering unto Yahweh. And the meat offering thereof shall be 2/10 deals of fine flour mingled with oil, an offering made by fire unto Yahweh for a sweet savor. And the drink offering thereof shall be of wine, the 4th part of a hin. And you shall eat neither bread, nor parched corn, nor green ears, until the selfsame day that you have brought an offering unto your Elohim. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. So this is a statute that lasts beyond any vanishing point. If you've ever studied first fruits, you find some different opinions about when it takes place. When does Passover take place?
14th of Leviticus.
Everybody knows. When does unleavened bread take place? Everybody knows. But when is first fruits? Well, some say one thing and some say another thing, and the reason is because of the answer that's found in verse 11 that says, on the morrow after the Sabbath. The difference of opinions arise because the question becomes, which Sabbath is he referring to? Is he referring to the weekly Sabbath? Or is he referring to the Sabbath of Unleavened Bread? And how you answer that question is extremely important. And the reason I say it's important is because an incorrect answer gives you an incorrect pattern. The wrong answer creates the wrong shadow.
Right.
And the shadow has to be precise.
Yes, sir.
Remember on Passover? The shadow, the object, when we were talking about Passover, the shadow that the object cast had to match perfectly with that was cast in the shadow. Well, it's the same thing with first fruits. We've got to make sure that the shadow that's being cast fits perfectly with what we read in the Gospel. So let's talk about which Sabbath this is referring to. Let me begin by telling you that there are some who think that the Sabbath being referred to here is the weekly 7th-day Sabbath. I do not. There are some who do. They believe it is Saturday. If you believe that the Sabbath spoken of here is the weekly Sabbath, then first fruits will always fall on the first day of the week. Always. It'll always be Sunday. Pentecost will always fall on the first day of the week too. Pentecost will always be Sunday. This concept fits well to those who hold a Sunday worship. I'm not saying that everybody who believes this way believes in Sunday worship. I'm just saying that those who worship on Sunday like the fact that first fruits, in their opinion, reflects the resurrection. It happened on a Sunday, and that Pentecost happened on a Sunday too. But that's what happens if you say that the Sabbath here is the weekly Sabbath. Those who hold to this belief reject that the Sabbath being referred to could be the first day of unleavened bread. And when you read their, what's the word I'm looking for? When you read their studies or their teachings, here's what they say. They say that the first day of unleavened bread and the 7th day of unleavened bread are holy convocations, but they say they're never called a Sabbath. And that since they're not called a Sabbath, we can't call them a Sabbath. Here's the sticky point. I agree with them. I agree that it's not called by that word Sabbath. There's no place that reads, "In the first day of unleavened bread shall be a Sabbath." There's no place that reads, "In the 7th day of unleavened bread shall be a Sabbath." However, to reject them as being Sabbaths, I believe, is to biblically err. It's a mistake. And let me explain what I mean. I want to give you two reasons why the first day and the seventh day of unleavened bread are Sabbaths. Reason number one, the Bible makes it clear that these 2 days are Sabbaths by what it says about them. Even though it never uses the term Sabbath, what it says about them makes it clear they are Sabbath. We saw in Exodus 12:42 that the first day of unleavened bread is a day to be much observed. Then we also saw in John 19:31 that it said that this Sabbath is a high day. This Sabbath day is mega. Let me break that down and make sure we get the simplicity of that. Exodus 12:42 said it's a night to be much observed. What night is he referring to in Exodus 12:42? They have consumed the Passover lamb through that night, and when morning comes, they're leaving Egypt. So we're talking about the 15th day of the first month. We're talking about unleavened bread. This day is to be a day much observed. Then when you get to John 19:31, the Jews, therefore, it says, because it was a preparation that the body should not remain upon the cross on the Sabbath day, for that Sabbath day was a high day. Exodus 12 lets us know it was the Sabbath, the high day, the mega day, the much to be observed day is the day going into unleavened bread. John 19 is letting us know it's the same thing. On the 14th, the Messiah was crucified, right? On the 14th, he was nailed to a stake. They want to get his body down before sun sets. Why? Because when the sun sets, Abib 15 starts. It's to be protected according to Exodus 12:42. That day has to be protected. It has to be guarded. And so they're getting the body down and to get it in a tomb before that day begins. And then it says in John 19:31, for that Sabbath day was mega. So even though, I guess I should have clarified a while ago, even though Torah never calls it a Sabbath, John 19 refers to it as a Sabbath. Everybody with me? Think about it now. It's not hard. Put those two verses together. Exodus 12:42, without a doubt, talking about the 15th. John 19:31, without a doubt, is talking about the 15th as well. So that day is a Sabbath. And we have more evidence that it's a Sabbath besides that. Exodus 12:16 says this. And in the first day there shall be a holy convocation. And in the seventh day there shall be a holy convocation to you. No manner of work shall be done in them. No manner of work shall be done in them. That's the very essence of a Sabbath, right? Right. It means to rest. Yeah. Then Leviticus 23 tells us this. Leviticus 23 verse 7 and 8 says, in the first day you'll have a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein. You shall offer an offering made by fire unto Yahweh 7 days. And the seventh day is a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein. Doing no servile work identifies those 2 days as Sabbaths. No work's to be performed. No servile work is to be performed. It's the exact same instruction we have concerning a weekly Sabbath. So there are 3 witnesses that the 15th day of the first month is a Sabbath. And if the 15th day is a Sabbath, that would mean that the sheaf is to be offered or to be waved on the day after that is what I'm going to propose to you today, which means that what I want to share with you today, and I want you to stay with me to the end of this thing, I want to share with you today that first fruits falls on the 16th day of the first month. And when you see that, and you're willing to let the Scriptures say what they say in the Gospels and in the epistles, they will show you that shadow and the Messiah fit perfectly together. So, we're going to talk about first fruits being on the 16th day. Well, somebody might say, well, if it is on the 16th day, why didn't the Bible just say it's on the 16th day? And my answer is, it did. The context of Leviticus 23 is telling us that it is the 16th day. If you look at it one more time there in Leviticus 23, 7 through 11, I'm just going to read it. Verse 7. In the first day you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein. But you shall offer an offering made by fire unto Yahweh 7 days. And the seventh day is a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein. So, without a doubt, he has established that those 2 days are Sabbaths. Then he continues. It's the exact same breath. And Yahweh said unto Moses, Speak unto the children of Israel, say unto them, when you be come into the land, which I give unto you, and shall reap the harvest thereof, you shall bring a sheaf of the firstfruits of your harvest unto the priest. And you shall wave the sheaf before Yahweh to be accepted for you. On the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it. What Sabbath has he just been talking about? It's the Sabbath of firstfruits. I think we get what I think is a hint as to why he didn't say the 16th when he went into this detail there in verse 10. He says that you're going to observe this. Let me see if I can explain this. You're going to observe this when you be come into the land. You see that phrase? When you be come into the land. So he's put a qualifier on this feast. What is sin? Sin is a transgression of the law. So if Yahweh said on the 16th day of the first month you'll keep first fruits, he would have automatically put them in a position of sinning. Because for the next 40 years they're going to be wandering through a wilderness, a desert. They're going to have no barley to harvest, to bring to the temple, to bring to the priest, to bring to the tabernacle. They'll have nothing. They're eating manna for 40 years. Are you with me? There will be no sheaf. And so rather than saying on the 16th day, what Yahweh said was, when you be come into the land, you see that? Which I'm going to give to you, you'll reap a harvest, then you'll bring that sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest unto the priest, and he'll wave it on the Sabbath, on the morrow after the Sabbath. But he's tied it to unleavened bread, okay? Passover is connected to unleavened bread. The lamb is consumed going into the night of unleavened bread. Unleavened bread is connected to first fruits. The sheaf of first fruits is waved on the morrow after the Sabbath. So those 3 feasts are connected and cannot be separated. And Pentecost is connected to first fruits. So actually all 4 feasts are connected with a cord that cannot be separated. You've got Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, and then how is first fruits and Pentecost connected? When do you start counting? You know? You start counting the day you wave the sheaf. So on the day you're waving the sheaf, which is first fruits, you say this is day 1. And then you count 7 Sabbaths, right? And then on the 50th day, and when the Pentecost was fully come. So it's real important that we see that those 4 feasts are connected and they cannot be separated. So the first reason why I disagree with those who say that unleavened bread is not a Sabbath being referred to in Leviticus 23 is the biblical evidence. The second reason I disagree is if first fruits falls on any other day than the day after unleavened bread, I do not believe that it creates an accurate pattern that we can follow. It does not create an accurate foreshadowing of the resurrection. There is actually no pattern. If first fruits had to fall on the day after a weekly Sabbath, then it would always be a different number of days from unleavened bread. If Passover fell on a Monday and unleavened bread fell on a Tuesday, and if first fruits was not until the day after the weekly Sabbath, then it would be a total of 6 days before first fruits was observed. How does that foreshadow the resurrection? And I think that is one of the handouts I gave you. Let me go back. Yeah, there. And so let me explain this handout that you have, this chart that you have. See at the top up there? Rather than having Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I've got day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7. The shaded areas would be the 7th day, which would be the weekly Sabbaths. right? So if Abib 14 fell on the first day of the week, which it can, is your birthday always on the same day of the week every year? No, it always changes. Same thing with this. Abib 14 could fall on any day, but if it fell on the first day of the week, and then unleavened bread is on day 2, but you don't celebrate first fruits until the morrow after the Sabbath, and you say it's a weekly Sabbath, from 14 you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days. So my problem with that is, how can that be a representation of the resurrection? How can that be a pattern? And then if it fell on Monday, you've got 6 days. If it fell on Tuesday, you got 5 days. Every year, the pattern would change. And if a pattern changes, it's not a pattern, is it? Everybody understand that? My contention is, it's impossible for that to be the correct pattern. There is an exact day that He was resurrected, and first fruits has to precisely reveal that to us. These feasts are shadows of the Messiah's person and work. And His person and work were precise and perfect in every way. We've already seen that when we looked at Passover. If it's true about Passover, it will be true about first fruits. For first fruits to be a pattern of the resurrection, it has to work every time. The pattern has to work every time. If first fruits follows unleavened bread, though, look here, if first fruits follows unleavened bread, the pattern always works. Okay? 1 Corinthians 15 says this, "But now is the Messiah risen from the dead and become the first fruits of them that slept. For since by man came death, by man came also the resurrection of the dead. For as in Adam all die, even so in the Messiah shall all be made alive. But every man in his own order, the Messiah the first fruits, afterward they that are the Messiahs that is coming." This is another one of those passages in the back of the Bible that it's impossible to understand it unless you read the front of the Bible. Twice Paul called the Messiah the first fruits, and he speaks of Him being the first fruits in relation to the resurrection. By His resurrection, He's making it known He became the first fruits. We just read out of the front of the book, Leviticus 23, about a Moedim called first fruits. This is what Paul is referring to. That feast is about the resurrection of the Messiah. He's letting us know that that feast represents the resurrection. In first fruits, the people went out on a certain day and cut down a sheaf. And they brought it dead, presented it. It can't be alive anymore, right, if it's cut down? So think about that. They go into the field, they cut it down, they bundle it up, they wrap it up. It's dead. They bring it and they present it to the priest. On the day after the Sabbath, on the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest waved it before Yahweh. Why did he wave it? Think about that for a minute. This is a pattern that he's doing for over 1,500 years. Why is he taking that sheaf and waving it? Exactly. The 14th represents the day He died. 15th, He's in the tomb. The 16th, the priest takes that sheaf of that barley that was once dead and he makes it begin to dance, representing life, that it's alive. It looks like the wind's blowing through it like it once did. It looks like it's alive again, and he's shaking it before Yahweh, waving it before Yahweh as that which is alive. This is the resurrection that's being pictured for over 1,500 years before it ever took place. You cannot rearrange the shadow to make it fit the Messiah. And you cannot rearrange the Messiah to make Him fit that shadow. The shadow must represent Him perfectly, and He must fit in the shadow perfectly. You can't take that horse and stick him in the shadow of the elephant. You can't take that rhino and stick him in the shadow of the elephant and say, well, that's close enough. And we can't take a pattern about the resurrection and say, well, sometimes it's the 6th day, sometimes it's the 7th day, sometimes it's the 3rd day, and say, well, that's close enough. They have to be precise. When we looked at Passover, it was precise. He entered on the 10th, he was slain on the 14th. We're told that he died in the early afternoon of the 14th, just like he was supposed to betwixt the evening. He fit the shadow perfectly. We have to be able to do the same thing with first fruits, and the only way to do that is by seeing that first fruits takes place on the 16th. When you look at this again, all I want you to concentrate on right now is that if first fruits is the 16th, I don't care what day the 14th falls on, the 16th is always in the same place. It comes after 15. It's not sometimes 5 days away, 7 days away, 6 days away. It's always 3 days away. 14, 15, 16, right? And so when we look at the pattern of first fruits, here's what we see. We know that the lamb was slain on the 14th. No servile work is done on the 15th. That's a Sabbath. And so first fruits is taking place on the 16th. Therefore we have, if we count them, see that black dot right there in the middle of number 1? And you've got a copy of this. See the black dot? That's in the 3rd hour of that day. So that's representing when the lamb was slain. If we're talking about Exodus 12, we're talking about that representing when the lamb was slain. So that's day 1. That evening, you got the nighttime, that becomes night 1. Then you got day 2, night 2, day 3, and night 3. And Abib 17 would begin day 4. All right. So keep that in mind as we move on. Now the question is, if this is the pattern of first fruits, and we can say, yeah, okay, that's first fruits. First fruits always takes place on the 16th. It would be the 3rd day after the lamb was slain. Does that pattern fit the Messiah? If it doesn't fit perfectly, then that's wrong. Well, let's look and see. Here's what I want you to do first. In the back of that handout I gave you, there is a quiz. Don't moan and groan about quizzes. We fed you a free lunch. I'm not asking you to write me a doctoral thesis, but I would like for you to briefly answer those questions. Was the Messiah in the tomb for 3 days and 3 nights? Question number 1. Question number 2. Was the Messiah resurrected after 3 days and 3 nights? Question number 3. Does the Bible say that Messiah was resurrected on the first day of the week? All of those probably been pretty simple. Number 4, where did the Messiah go when he died? Number 5, do we cease to exist when we die? Number 6, was the Messiah seen by his followers on the day of his resurrection? And number 7, what did he do and where did he go when he was resurrected? After you finish jotting down your answers, take a short break and then we're going to come back and we're going to take this pattern and see if it fits with the Messiah.
You are so sweet. You are so sweet, and I sing for you. I sing